Video Fundamentals with Ian Haigh. How are you, my friend?
Oh wow, putting the fun into or the mental into fundamentals.
That's right. Yeah, it's so great to have you. So great to, yeah, just being able to do something with you once again. It's always a pleasure. We had you on Adobe Live in real life a while ago. We had a fantastic time hanging out doing that. So it's great to have you back again in this new working from home
Thank you.
iteration.
Yes, thank you. No, it is exciting to be back and doing something I didn't think I'd be doing. But yeah, it's the last time we did the After Effects scripting and lots of hacks and all that kind of thing.
Mm.
And we're going to look at Premiere now.
That's awesome. And let's have a shout out to chat. See our mutual friend, Stephen Grayson in chat. How are you, Stephen? And Aaron, nice to see you, John. Please jump over into chat. Say hi. We'd love to find out where you are in the world at this particular time. It's 9 o'clock. We're both in Sydney, Australia. And it's great to have everybody from around the world learning together. And first thing I might do is, let's see, do I have an updated schedule? No, I haven't updated the schedule. I'll do that a little bit later in the day. But what I thought we might do is just have a look at like your website or some of your work, so we can get a bit of an idea of what you do. What is it that Ian Haigh does? Let's find out.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you asked me that question, Flynn. So I just actually last night sort of did a very soft launch. This was today was the impetus for finally getting this website that I've been working on for several months now online. So Adobe Live is going to be the launch platform. So here we are, 30 seconds of people. So I've filmed and animated all of the projects that you can see here. We've got projects from Qantas, from Spotify. I've worked with some great agencies, CD and Co. I've worked with I've worked with. So that was basically a kind of an overview. So I do filming, I do animation, and I've been doing more writing recently as well.
Mm.
So here's a few of the feature projects: Spotify, Opera Australia. That was a lot of fun. Car Next Door and Qantas. So here's a few of the services: social media, writing, animation, and directing. And these are some of the partners that we've worked with over the years. So over here on the work page is a few of the projects that we're particularly proud of. So Spotify, we wrote and produced those with Christopher Doyle. We've worked with Lendlease, working on a lot of pitches for them. Opera Australia. This one I'll just click into. This was a lot of fun. So we wrote, directed, and produced 20 short videos that showed off the lighter side. I think a lot of people sort of perceived opera as being sort of stuffy and boring, and we wanted to get behind the scenes and show off the talents of all of the people that work there. People who, wig makers, set designers, all that kind of thing. And we made 20 short spots for their social media channels. AGSM from UNSW, Car Next Door working with puppets. So there's a real variety there. Westpac Insurance, and so if you're interested, then I would welcome you to come and check it out at ketchup.net.au.
And why Ketchup, other than it's great on everything?
Yeah. It's basically the idea behind Ketchup was to. Sorry, to the little BBC reporter moment there. The idea behind Ketchup was, I think it's. I was looking for the first thing you need to do in this day and age is find something that you can actually get the URL for, and right. I just like the idea. I sort of post-rationalized it in as much as Ketchup is something that you can add to something else to make it better. And so my tagline originally was everything is better with Ketchup. So if you're creating a brand, or you're creating a story, or you're trying to communicate to your partners or to your clients or to your audience, that if you add Ketchup, then we can come in and help you out with your communications, help you out with your storytelling, and help you out with your brand. And so by bringing us in, then you can make your project that much tastier.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Yeah, hey, some more people in chat from Kansas. That's awesome. Hey, Eugene and Heather. And so great to have you. Great to have you here. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown of the way that we've been doing things lately. It seemed to be working quite well here on Adobe Live for our sessions. We're here for 2 hours with Ian, so it's a great time to ask questions, whether you are at a beginner level, whether you're very experienced with sort of filmmaking, and of course he does lots of other things like writing and scripting and stuff. We did a whole session. I'm sure we'll do another one in the future on scripting in After Effects and all sorts of shortcuts. So feel free to ask your questions. You recently came out with a series of Gmail hacks, which on the surface might not be as sexy to the younger crowd, but as someone that spends a lot of time writing emails, there was some great stuff in there as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think being in lockdown has got a lot of people, myself included, given the opportunity to explore things that have been on the back burner for a long time. And I kept on thinking, I've always wanted to kind of try a bit of YouTube, and so I thought this would be the impetus. And so I've done a few videos like this. Gmail. I've tried to keep them quite broad at first, just to try and build up a bit of an audience. And so without getting too technical, but I expect they're going to get more and more technical. So I've got lots of super geeky tips that I want to share.
Right.
A lot of it will be around the kind of design and branding and Adobe spaces for people who work with loads of files, or with video or these kinds of things. And so I think I've got a plan to kind of build up very gently and secretly make people into geeks before they even realize what's happened.
Oh, just suddenly, oh wow, I'm a nerd. This is amazing. Look at all these hacks I know.
Just like, oh my God, look at me. I'm so powerful all of a sudden.
Wake up one morning and look in your mirror and you're just like, oh my God, am I a nerd?
You've all been bitten by radioactive nerds overnight.
That's awesome. All right, well, maybe we should jump into what we're going to tackle today. We'll flip back over to your screen, over to the wonderful Jessica Malboy.
Yes, she is. There's Jess.
Is what we have
having difficulty getting reception. Okay, so today, what I thought we would look at is Adobe Premiere, and because more and more of us are sort of doing video, it's so accessible now. Lots of people have got Premiere in their Creative Cloud subscription. Perhaps they haven't had a chance to really kick the tires on it. Everyone carries a camera around with them all the time, like it's in your pocket all the time. And so more and more people are playing around with video. And so I thought we'd look at multi-camera setup, first of all. Some of the kit that I use to shoot on, how I've set this one up, and basically how to put together a multi-camera setup and why you might want to. Then we'll have a look at grading log footage, and I'll explain what log footage is and why you would want to shoot in that format and the advantages of doing that. How you can set up additional camera angles, like basically you can use your sort of traditional 2-camera angle setup, but then you can also get creative and scale it and move it around and create additional camera angles. So I'll show you, I'll end up with 2 cameras, I'll end up with 4 different angles, so to give more flexibility.
Oh, cool.
Perhaps touching on also, the other big one was Speechmatics is this amazing website that does artificial intelligence speech transcription. So that if you've got a very long interview with somebody, you just send them the audio and it'll send you back speech. And then using this amazing plugin for Premiere called Transcriptive, it gives you a panel that then you can click on a word and it'll jump to that place on the timeline. So it's incredibly efficient for editing. And then finally, if we've got time and everything's running to schedule, then we can have a look at the so-called Mogurt workflow, which is basically creating a motion graphics template in After Effects that's then editable in Premiere, which is an incredibly flexible way of working.
That's a lot. That's amazing. You're going to save me. You're going to save us all a lot of time. I like it.
It's ambitious, but I'm inspired by seeing the Tiger King in the background.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a lot of backgrounds, but why not Tiger King? Maybe I'll flip it around. Maybe I'll flip it around a little bit today.
Nice.
Cool. Let's jump to your desktop with the much better visuals than my
Welcome to
cheesy
my
meme
desktop.
background.
Okay, so effectively, these are the files that we're working on today. So I shot this one. Now, I just want to apologize in advance. I'm not usually in the habit of shooting interviews of myself by myself. This was just, kind of out of necessity. But so I set up 2 cameras and a microphone in my backyard, pressed record on both of them, and then sat down and talked for about 5 minutes, just total gibberish, as you can imagine. But I needed to do that to get the footage for this little demo. So this is one camera angle, and we're calling this camera A, and that was shot on this setup. So this is a Sony A7S.
What a beast.
Mark II camera. Yeah, well, the lens is a beast. This is a Canon 70 to 200mm f2.8. Like, it's an absolute beautiful lens. I love it. And it's got this part here is a Metabones adapter, because it's a Sony camera with Canon glass on, so it needs this little adapter for for them to be able to talk to each other. So as you can see, just the tiny little camera hanging off the back of this gigantic lens there. But the camera itself has got a beautiful big sensor in it and extremely good low light performance, which is why it's been such a favorite in the video profession. So that's one camera. The other camera, which I'm calling the B cam, so filming at the same time, but as you can see, I am
sharpness as well.
We're on a slightly different angle. So you might be thinking, why would you want to have 2 different camera angles set up like that? And the idea is basically it allows you to switch between camera angles. So if you needed to cut out part of your edit, you don't like what someone said, perhaps they've gone or then you can switch from one camera angle to another and cut out anything that was in between, and it effectively hides the edit. So it's a really efficient way of basically kind of hiding those little edits, which I can show you a bit later on.
Awesome.
And finally, in our source materials, we have, this is just a WAV file, which is just purely audio, so there's no video at all.
Can we play this for 1 second and just find out if chat can hear it? Because there's a lot of tricky things happening with our audio in the background. I'd like to find out really early on if audio is coming clear. So
yeah, sure. So what I might do is actually, I think we figured out before that if I play it through Premiere, that was going to be a successful, hopefully.
External recorder to get a 4K signal.
All right. We'll hear from chat if that works through. As long as you can hear that, that's cool. There's a workaround, but if you can hear it, then that will make things a lot easier for this morning stream.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's not super crucial that you hear it, but it probably does give gives a better impression of the quality difference. So that was what I wanted to touch on, is basically with your this is the external microphone that I was shooting on. So here we have, this is the actual the transmitter. As you can see, there's a tiny little wireless lapel mic there, which you can just clip onto. If you have a quick look at here, you can see that's it clipped onto my shirt.
Yep.
So the camera can be like quite far away from the subject. That's transmitting to this, which is the receiver, and then that goes into this, the H4n Zoom. And these little petals were actually on the desk. I didn't just sprinkle them around there to make it look more aesthetically pleasing.
It's like a garnish.
Anyway, yeah.
It's lovely. Just thanks Amanda and JB for letting us know that you can hear the audio. That's great. Everything's working as intended. Look at us.
Thank you, Amanda and JB. So basically this thing just records onto an SD card. So the reason that you do that is effectively the built-in audio on a little camera like this is not great. So it's good enough for in a pinch if you really have to use the audio on board, but for anything other than just really kind of like home video, you're going to want to get a professional microphone, which you don't have to spend an absolute fortune on, but the difference is enormous between the onboard camera on onboard audio from a little camera like that to a professional mic, or even the audio that you can get from an iPhone or comparable phone is going to be a lot better. So the difficulty comes in where you've got this one started recording at a certain time, And then this one will start recording at a certain time. And
oh, we may have a frozen Ian. Ladies and oh, you're back. I've lost your audio. Oh, there you are. You might be back.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
It's still live TV.
Yeah. It happens. It's live. It's real. This is not pre-recorded. You can tell because of little freezes and things like that.
Yeah, believe it or not, that wasn't planned, folks. You can tell it wasn't planned because look at the frame that I've paused myself on here. I look like I've just been hit in the head with a frying pan or something. Let's just find something a little more. Okay. There. Okay, a little bit better.
That's a bit better. Nice.
Thanks. Not much better. But anyway, so what I was explaining was why you would use an external audio recorder. So the quality is way, way better. The next part is syncing up your external audio with those two bits of video. Because as you can imagine, they might have started recording at different times. And so now you need to sort of line them all up so that so that it looks like I'm saying what I'm saying.
Right.
So now we're going to just chuck those straight into Premiere. I'm going to just drag them straight from the desktop into my project.
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest way, there's a couple of ways of doing this. You can actually just select all three. So we've got here camera A, camera B, and just the plain audio. And I want to synchronize all of those. Now you can just go create multi-camera source sequence and use the audio waveform. And what that's going to do is if I open up, if I have a look at one of these files, this is from the camera, you can see that there is audio on here.
And that's just the camera audio, right?
That's just the camera audio. So this is not particularly good quality. If I put next to that the wireless mic, you can see that the audio is just like much, much better quality. Just going to zoom in here a little bit and make that timeline a bit bigger. I mean, you can actually just see that this is much quieter, this is much louder. And that's just there are two factors for that. One is that the quality of the mic is much better, and the other is that it's just right next to me, whereas the camera is just physically further away. So by selecting all three of those files, right-clicking or control-clicking and going create multi-camera source sequence, and then choosing for synchronized point audio, it will actually look at the audio waveforms for all three of those files, and then it will attempt to sort of marry them all up, like sync them together so that the audio waveform is at the same point for all three. But which is great most of the time, but there's a reason that I've done it slightly differently, and I'll show you why in a second. Is basically one of my cameras doesn't quite have the same, the audio doesn't quite marry up with the picture exactly. And I don't know if that's a fault of the camera or if it's just getting a bit old or what the problem is, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. So the way that you can get around that is here's me coming and sitting down. And the first thing I do after just getting comfortable is clap. And that's not just me congratulating myself for sitting down successfully. There's a reason for it. There's actually, if you, everyone's sort of familiar with the clapperboard on a film set, you know, when they've got this little, it's called a clapperboard basically. It's got it's got a board, it's got the name of the title, the director, the scene and the take. And then on the top, it has like a piece of wood that goes,
yeah.
And they go, and it's basically that is used to synchronize the sound and the picture. And that's as effectively what I'm doing here is giving a visual cue as well as an audio cue so that I can sync up those two camera angles with my external audio. So what I'm going to do now is just scrub through that timeline until we find the clap. And
I need that as a GIF of just you sitting down and looking to the left and clapping. I need this in my life.
I'll make that available for all of your viewers later on.
Thank you.
So there we go. I'm just going to drop a marker in right now. So that's basically where where the motion blur stops. They've stopped. Put a marker in right there. As you can see, there's my little marker down at the bottom left.
Is that M in Premiere, like a lot of other?
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm just pressing M, or there's a handy little button down here as well, add marker.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the kind of person who likes visual cues, now I'm going to my other camera angle, and I'm just going to find that same point. And it's the same clap. So this time, if I scrub through frame by frame, and I've got scrub audio on, which is Shift S, is the basically scrub audio means that as I'm dragging the timeline, you can actually hear. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yep, comes through.
Yeah, so that's basically means if I turn that off, then I'd be able to scrub and I wouldn't hear anything. So the nice thing about it is that I can scrub through and find exactly the right audio cue. So I'm going through frame by frame. Look at me, I'm so pleased. I just sat down.
Give yourself a round of applause.
That's not right. And now I need to loop that clap. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Okay, and then here comes the clap. Now you'll notice that when I step through here, I hear before my hands clap.
Right.
And that's where I'm saying that my camera is actually slightly out, which is why doing it like this is so it was only not both cameras, just one of them, but this is a more accurate way for me to sync it up.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same point where my hands have stopped being blurred, I'm just going to drop a marker in there. And finally, I'm going to go into the audio waveform. And you can see, basically, this is all me talking.
Mm-hmm.
And this point here is the clap. And it's really easy to find because it's just much sort of like more, it's bigger and higher on the timeline. So I can play that. There's my clap.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to go and drop a marker on that point. So now all three files have got a marker on them. When I right click on all three of those files and go create multi-camera source sequence, one of my options is clip marker. And because they've all got a marker on them, mm-hmm. I'm effectively telling Premiere that I want you to make one multi-camera source sequence using all three of those files. And I want you to line them all up where I've dropped the marker on each of them.
Mm.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. When I hit OK, it's neatly put those away in a process clips folder, and it's got this new file, new sequence rather. And as you can see, all three of those, you could do that manually, but it's kind of nice that it does it for you.
Oh yeah.
They're all lined up there for you.
I'm having flashbacks to doing all this manually many years ago.
It can be a real nightmare. Once I flew all the way to Dubai to make a video, and I went around and interviewed all of these people. And the external audio was fine, but I hadn't done the clap. I'd forgotten to do the clap, and I'd also turned off the audio on the cameras.
Right.
And so I had no guide track, no guide audio. Right. And so basically, what I had to do was scrub through until I could see them doing something loud, like laughing, and then I would try and find the corresponding point on the audio track, and then try and line them all up. And it was this is why I don't forget to do the clap.
That's why this stuff is important. Actually, I've just got a question, which is a good time to bring it up because we can see it on the screen here. Eugene was asking, he notices that the time codes and track indicators on the screen in the program panel, and they're wondering how you did that. They've used multicam feature before, but they hadn't seen that before.
Oh, do you mean sort of on the
The time codes
This
and track
part up here.
indicators on the screen. Yeah, I'm assuming so, because I haven't seen that before either. And correct me if I asked that question wrong, Eugene, but yeah, I'm assuming that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, so that would be under overlays. So if I go into the program monitor here, and there's this handy little spanner. This handy little spanner down here. I think we're just sitting above it. Our little pictures. So if I click on that, you get this pop-up menu, and this is the overlays. So under settings, you can basically customize what's going on in here. So we've got source, time code, all tracks. So that's what that is. And so you can have all kinds of handy little. If I turn on file name up here, for example, they're going to get all of those different file names as an overlay at the top. So you can customize it to your heart's content. And there's a couple you can make. Presets as well, so that's the editing overlay, which is just one of the defaults, one of the built-ins. So I hope that was what you were looking for.
That was, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, all sorts of, and it looks really cool as well. Just like all of these numbers and everything, kind of makes it look more impressive. So I like having those things on. Okay, I might just turn it off with such a tiny little screen that I'm on today. Okay, so now if I hit play on there,
HDMI out to send the raw signal from the sensor into the external.
So as you can see, the sound, when I right-clicked and made it into this multi-camera source sequence, it automatically muted the two channels. So it's still got the original audio there from the built-in cameras, but it's muted them because it understood correctly that I was most interested in having the external audio as the main one. If I turn those, if I solo one of those tracks, you can hear the difference. Like this is one of the camera. This is from the camera audio.
It looks very non-contrasty and desaturated.
You can hear a lot more noise, and this is the other camera audio.
So it looks bad, basically.
It's even worse. It's a bit further away.
Yeah, and going back to the original.
Yeah, then you can add either a
so
lookup
bassy.
table, a LUT.
Such a handsome voice. Sounds so good.
Oh, stop. Well, thank you. So you can hear the difference. It's basically, it really does make an enormous difference to how, and it's long been recognized that the audio is the one thing that you cannot get wrong. Like in your video, people will forgive poor picture quality, but people will not forgive poor audio. It just means that with bad audio, people are just going to tune out immediately. But bad picture quality is like people will forgive a lot more. So audio is key. It's just super important.
Yeah, and I think that works across like any platform, like whether it's streaming like we're doing now, which is why I was so concerned about the audio working well for everyone, or even on social media. Like even there was a question actually in chat about do you have some tips for people editing in social media? And I think that's probably one that we can both agree on is really try to get your audio right. And if you can have like any sort of external microphone or lavalier or lapel mic, it will be so much better for your audience that it's worth an investment, probably more so than a good camera.
Yeah, I completely. And you'd have more experience than most with Australian Design Radio and your, I don't know, just probably journey into understanding just all of the audio is a whole another world. Like
it really is, yeah.
There is a reason why audio engineers are like seriously technically adept people, because there's so much more to it than meets the eye. And you start to realize as well, not to go down to too much of a rabbit hole, but you realize just how much processing your brain does when you are having a conversation with someone. So, I used to be in an office and we talked about doing a podcast in there. And so we set up our equipment and everything and recorded it, and then thought, oh, that went really well, and didn't realize that the whole time, because the sun had come out and hit the roof, and the roof was expanding and cracking and
Oh,
making all of
right.
these kind of just corrugated iron roof noise that we had completely filtered out because we were just having the conversation and concentrating on that. But then when you listen to it back, it was just completely unusable. So it gives you another appreciation for just how much processing your brain does to make everything sort of seem normal at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have too many war stories about thinking that we recorded everything very, very well and patting each other on the back and getting the file back, back into a studio environment and putting on headphones and just thinking, what is that sound in the background? What am I doing?
Yeah.
One of us, used to have a bit of a bigger beard and like, oh, it turns out I scratched my beard for 55 minutes, little things like that. It can make a huge difference to the point where it becomes unusable.
Yes.
Because, it's just going to be a subpar experience for people. And I think we all expect pretty high quality stuff these days because there's a lot out there.
They do. So audiophiles, So back to this. So I have my multi-camera. This is all synchronized. It's all happy with that. I'm just going to make a new sequence now. Now the original source material for this was is 4K. So that's the resolution up here, 3840 pixels wide by 2160 pixels tall.
Nice.
Now, to get some more flexibility, so both cameras. There's just one small thing while I remember it is I was shooting on this was the B camera, which was a Sony A7S Mark I with a Sony 55mm lens, a little bit of a variable neutral density filter on the top, and then shooting into this, which is a Shogun external monitor. So with this HDMI cable, I was shooting RAW and recording into ProRes on this little monitor here. So that was how come I was able to shoot. Otherwise, that camera would have normally shoots in a lower resolution, but because I was using the external monitor, I was able to get 4K out of it. So
so you can get 4K out of a traditionally, like if you just had the camera, you'd be shooting in HD or something. But because you have that external thing, you can get an external output to 4K. No, really? Oh,
exactly. Yeah,
we're gonna have a long conversation after this call about all this stuff. That is very interesting. I did not know you could do that. Cool.
Yeah. So it's basically like it was able to it had the sensor, it had everything in it. What it didn't have was the kind of ability to write the data quickly enough to the medium. And so if you just send out a raw HDMI signal to something that's more technically adept, then like that little beast, which has I've got it right here. This is one of the hard drives it's this little SSD solid state hard drive, and it just writes to that. That's 500 gigabytes, and it'll just fill that up in no time.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it's a good setup. Okay, so I've just made a new sequence here, and I'm just going to drop our new multi-camera sequence in there. It's asking me if I want to match the sequencer settings. So that's effectively recognizing the fact that the one that we made was a 4K source file, and the one that I'm dropping it into is only 1080. So I'm going to say I want to keep the existing, which is going to crop me a little bit because the original file was much bigger. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to scale that down to make it fit. But I'll show you in a minute how we can take advantage of that to actually make new camera angles by scaling and moving the original picture. Cool. So now we've got this in here. You can see that it says MC1 here. So that's multi-camera angle 1. And if I double click this, it's going to open up my multi-camera source sequence, and you can see here are the two camera angles. They're synchronized, so that if I scrub through the timeline here, you can see that they're exactly in sequence. Nice. Turn off that annoying audio scrub. And the first thing I do is I basically sort of recognize that it's got this one at number 1 and this one at number 2. And to me, this one sort of seems like it should be at number 2. And this one seems like it should be at number 1 because this is the one that I'm kind of calling camera A, which is my main camera. So if I hold down Command, which would be Control on Windows, and double click this source sequence, or I can just go into the original here, Command double click that, and you can see it's really, I don't need these anymore, which are the audio from the original camera. So I'm just going to select those, delete them, and I should point out as well that they're linked to the video right now, which is usually quite helpful, because if I want to move that, it moves the audio with it. But in this instance, I just want to select those because I want to delete them. So I'm going to hold down Alt, Option on Mac, or Alt on Windows, to select those by themselves without selecting the corresponding video tracks. And then I'll just hit delete. I'm not interested in those anymore. So now I'm just left with my original 2 video tracks, but so video 1, I want this to be camera A. So literally all I have to do is move them into the order that I want. As I drag that, I'm just going to hold down Shift so that it doesn't move along the time axis at all. And now when I go back to my other sequence and open that up, you can see camera A is now angle 1 and camera B is now angle 2. And I seem to have found another great, look at that. Oh my
Great
God.
freeze frame.
Incredible. This is not flattering. Mm-hmm. My wife didn't agree to be the subject, which is why I have to embarrass myself like this. Sorry, you were saying?
There was some questions around like sort of the equipment and things like that. Do you use any peripherals with editing, like a loop deck? I don't actually know what that is. Do you know? You might know what that is.
I don't have any. I think it's much like you get these like a custom. It's a custom input, so that you've got sliders and trim, shuttle wheels and so on, so that you can zoom through your footage really, really quickly. There are some incredible tools out there. It's something that I have long wanted to look into, and basically, if I get any money, it's kind of trying to make a choice between, do I upgrade the camera equipment or do I get a new lens or that kind of thing. But I don't have anything like that, but it's something that is definitely on my wish list.
It's on the wish list. Okay, cool. Share your Amazon wish list with us, and we'll see what we can do. And also there was a question about how many camera angles are too many. Like, is 2 the kind of standard? Like, if we wanted to try this out at home, like, and we had our phone and a family member or a partner's phone, like, is that enough? Is that something?
Yeah, I think cameras? I don't think, there is, there comes a point where I think that it gets a bit silly if you were, it depends on what you're shooting. So that if you're shooting an interview and, there's a camera in front of you and there's a camera on the side, and then suddenly you cut to, there's a camera like looking straight down from above, and then there's a camera like behind you. And then it kind of there's a physical kind of limitation as well, like just in terms of, if you don't want the cameras to be in shot, then you can't have a camera behind someone and a camera in front of someone as well, because your cameras are going to show up. But if you were shooting a concert, for example, like if you had a sort of a seriously large, a big band, had budget to have tons and tons of cameras, you could like synchronize the time code on, you could have 17 cameras, you could have drones, you could have everything, and then make a massive multi-camera sequence and then cut between all of those. And if they're all in sync, then you can just basically, it's a bit like being a director at a TV station where you kind of, cut to camera 37 and then there's no reason why you wouldn't have like a whole bunch of cameras, but I suppose it depends on the setup and what you're trying to achieve. So, backyard interview with me, 2 cameras is probably fine. Radiohead concert, 37.
Right.
As a rule of thumb. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Thanks
yeah.
for that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so now that we've got that in there, and we can see we've got the different, still on that hideous picture. Okay, so we can basically now, with this in our timeline, if I just press, I can click on these to change the angle. Again, another hilarious image of me. I can click on this to change the angle, to choose it like that, or if I'm in the sequence itself, I can just literally type 1 or 2 on my keyboard, and it'll switch between them. To actually put a cut in, I can just hold down Control, and so right now I'll change it to camera angle 1. If I type Control 2, you can see now it actually will cut from camera angle 1.
As well, it's been with me for years. It's using a Sony 55mm prime.
So I hope that came through, but basically it cut from camera angle 1 there to camera angle 2 here.
Awesome. And so you would do that throughout like the whole thing? Kind of switch it
so
around?
this is where you would basically, so if I take an example, if I say, all right, I want to, it looks like I seem to have stopped talking there for a minute. So I'm just going to put in a cut here. So I've just, I can do it with visually. So if I type C to get my razor blade tool, I can just go and press cut here. So there's a cut. Nothing has changed yet because I haven't actually made an edit, but I've cut that bit of footage. Now I'll go and find somewhere else where I appear to have stopped talking. Let's see. Now this is not going to be perfect by any means. I'll put another cut in here, and now I'm just going to delete everything in between those two. And if I hold down Shift when I delete it, and if I hold down Option when I delete it, then it will automatically close up that gap.
Nice.
So here's the idea, is basically this is not going to be perfect because I haven't I haven't got the time to really do it properly. But these are both camera angle 1 at the moment. So if I press play.
My favorite lens, it is an absolute workhorse. Sharpness as well.
So there was a really noticeable jump,
right,
where I was like this. Apparently, I don't know what I'm doing there. And then going on to this frame where there's a really noticeable jump. So with a different camera angle, if I switch to camera angle 2 here, it's not going to be a perfect edit, but you'll see.
And it is my favorite lens. It is an absolute workhorse. Sharpness as well, because otherwise it's going to...
Now that's much more forgivable. Obviously you'd sort of choose where to put the edit point, but that cutting to a different angle now means that I cut out like a whole big chunk of footage, and it was less noticeable, or it was more manageable, or it was basically forgivable because I was able to sorry, I'm getting delivered a cup of coffee. Thank you, girls.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, just let go. Yeah. 1 second.
No, you take your time. You have that. So I'll just chat with chat for a minute. So we've got about 10 minutes, then we're going to stop for a bit of Q&A stuff. I can see a couple of questions in chat. And also jump over to Behance if you're not already, and you can log in. You can ask your questions in there, and we'll get them over to Ian. Or you're just going to hear us geek out about audio and video, and I'm going to ask him 1,000 questions that I've always wanted to ask Ian. We definitely share the love, I think, for all things technical when it comes to this sort of thing, and shortcuts and fun toys and devices and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that's effectively, that's where you would use multiple camera angles. What I wanted to show you as well, while we're still on this, I'm just going to delete that whole thing and put it back into the timeline, keep existing settings, is how you would set up even more full angles. So here we have our 2 angles. So we've got A, we've got B, which we're happy with. And because I shot this in 4K, and we're only going to render it out on a 1080p timeline, we have more need, which we can use to our advantage. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, make go to my multi-camera sequence, I'm going to go to sequence settings, and I'm just going to make this 1920 by 1080 as well. So that's a lower resolution.
So that's HD. Yep.
Yep, that's HD, 1080p. And now when I go in here, I can just basically scale that down to 50%, and that's where it was before.
Right.
I'll turn off the visibility on that one, and I'll make this one 50%. So it looks, for all intents and purposes, the same. And now what I'll do is I'm going to move my B camera up one, and I'm going to duplicate by holding down Option, Alt on Windows. I'm going to hold that up, and I'm going to hold down Shift as well so it doesn't move left and right. So now I have two camera A's, and one of them I'll make bigger. So I'm going to make this guy like 90%. If I click on the word motion up here in my effects controls, I can drag this around so I can move it to wherever I want. And so now effectively what I've done is with the same camera angle is I've given myself two different options from one angle.
Awesome.
And I can do the same with the B camera as well. So again, I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to drag that up to make a new layer up here, and I will make that one 90% as well. So much bigger. And
why 90% instead of 100%?
That's a vanity thing. If you get too close, I'm afraid you'll see my skin and how old I look. I'm sorry.
So for us following along, we could do it if we chose to. Okay.
Make it 150% and get really frightening. But yeah, no, that's arbitrary. You can put anything in there. One of the things that I didn't have time to do for this, but I thought would be fun, is with Adobe Character Animator, you can basically get a little like a cartoon avatar that you can control, feed it an audio track, and then have it say what that audio track says. So I thought if I'd had time, I would have made a little audio avatar of myself using this soundtrack and dropped that in as a multi-angle, as a multi-camera angle on there as well. So you could cut between real Ian and cartoon Ian as well, just to show you how flexible this setup is.
Nice.
So you can put anything in here. So you could have different grades, you could have black and white, you could have it in different effects or what have you, and it just gives you a lot of flexibility. So now when I go back to the main timeline, and if I double click on that, you can see that instead of having two angles, I've got four angles, and they're all synchronized so that if I scrub through the timeline, you can sort of see there's me talking about goodness knows what, all perfectly synchronized.
Amazing.
And so when you go back into this timeline here, and I can type in Control-1, we'll put in a cut. Jump forward a second, I'll put in Control-2, jump forward a second, Control-3, jump forward a second, jump forward 1 second, and then Control-4, and then you'll see it'll cut between four camera angles.
The other camera is a Sony A7S Mark I, and I love that little guy as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like it gives you the impression that there's many more cameras. Like there's a lot going on. So if it was something like, I think someone in the chat was mentioning this is cool workflow for music videos. And it's like, yeah, like to shake it up and keep people excited and entertained.
Yeah,
a lot of different camera angles is useful just in that sense as well.
Absolutely. And there are other ways of using this as well. So for example, once I had to shoot a presentation it was basically like there was some chap was giving a talk, and he had a slideshow, and the slideshow was obviously synced up to what he was saying, and then I was provided that slideshow as a bunch of separate files. What I was able to do was put him on a multi-track sequence and then put the slideshow on another track that was synced up to what he was saying. So it gave me all of the flexibility on the timeline to basically cut between him and the slideshow with different angles kind of thing. And so I didn't have to think about the timing of the slides. I knew that I'd synced it all up and I knew that it was all correct.
Where were you when I was editing Creative Mornings presentations once a month? And that was just the bane of my existence. I absolutely developed quite a hatred for trying to keep up and trying to edit in slides, particularly if someone had a 20-minute talk and had 250 slides.
Yeah.
That was extremely time-consuming to get up and then render and then publish and then promote and everything. So anything that can save us time like that is just so amazing, I find.
Yeah. No, I feel for you. Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes left before we break for questions or Q&A, I think.
Yep, that's right.
But effectively, that was more or less the go with the different camera angles. The other thing which I think is also quite helpful, so we've got our source sequence up here. This is our program monitor. If I type Shift 0, then I get the similar kind of, I get another overlay, but this is for my timeline. So if you can see here, I've got all of the camera angles, and this is the main one here. So when I double click that's showing me that's the source sequence monitor. So if I move through my timeline, these don't stay the same. I mean, these do stay the same. Whereas if I drag through here, these are updating to show me at a glance what each camera angle is seeing, if you like.
Yeah.
Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, you can get at that. That's multi-camera preview monitor. You can turn that on or off. And it's the command, the shortcut for that is just Shift 0 will turn that on and off.
Nice.
Another important thing to note is that the multi-camera sequence also works with audio. So you can even have different sort of, you can switch between different audio tracks. And I've used that to my advantage when I've had to, like, if I've had a client and we're working our way through different audio tracks, they haven't made up their mind yet. I can put different soundtracks into different layers on the timeline here, and so in the original, in the main sequence, if you like, it's got all kind of, it's got like fades where people start talking, and then it fades back up and so on. If you set them up as different angles in your multi-camera sequence, then you can switch between different audio tracks and different soundtracks. So you could also, for example, switch between different languages if you had, English and then Chinese and French or what have you, set them all up there and then just basically switch between them to get a really quick, way of changing the source without having to go through and doing it manually. So if you get creative with it, there's a lot of ways that you can use it.
Yeah, fantastic. That's amazing. Look, your timing is incredible. We've got 10 seconds till chat. So what do you think we take some questions?
Okay, sounds good.
My first question is to chat. I can't believe we've been live for almost an hour and no one's mentioned the Tiger King background that I set up. Really disappointed. I thought it was completely ridiculous, and it would be the first thing that someone asked about. But you know what? That's okay. It's not about me.
Oh, I love it.
So Ian, what I really like, what I couldn't help but thinking during this time was how you could use something like this, like particularly the sort of faking that extra angle, is how, particularly at a moment like right now where almost everybody is working from home, learning from home and everything like that, it's a great way to take existing footage and add an extra dimension to it as well. Like if you have some existing footage, you could still use that and then use the multi-camera angle technique that you showed there and export something like quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you touched on it before as well. Like one of the things that that this is, so you can use it to cover up edits, but I think another really important thing that multi-angle editing and multi-camera editing lets you do is just keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Is basically by setting up different, you could set up different grades or different filters or different whatever. When I look at, so I've got two girls and they love YouTube, and I look at what the YouTube basically the YouTube stars are doing, and it's amazing. There's the number of different sort of angles and the type happening. It's super hyperkinetic. There's never a dull moment, and so I think, to keep people interested and so on, you need things to be happening all the time. So this is just another kind of tool in your arsenal, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at something like TikTok and everything like that, like how, as you said, like how Connecticut, like everything's fast, everything's quick. It's over sort of before you even know what's happening. These like micro ads, and I think it all adds to like the online viewership, like language, like lexicon, like it kind of, remember a long time ago we might put up with ad breaks and things like that, and now it's just, if anything goes longer than 15 seconds, we're furious. Like it's way too long.
Yeah. There's this kind of it used to be the way that you'd capture someone's attention is just right with a television show, and so you'd have a successful sitcom or whatever, and you knew that people were going to hang around. And on TikTok, the next video is just a swipe away, and so if people's attention and you can't hold it for long enough, then you've lost them, because there are just an infinite number of channels out there, and the friction is just not there anymore for changing the channel.
That device, I think it was Shogun, I think you mentioned. The device you mentioned makes a quality of 4K. Can it be connected to everything or just DSLR cameras? How does that whole thing work?
Well, it can't be connected to everything. The one that I've got is a slightly older model, but it does have a lot of inputs. But you would need to, before you got your hands on something like that, you'd need to check your camera and make sure that it was. So the camera that I had, I knew that it had an HDMI out. I knew that it was able to send a raw signal to through that HDMI out. Mm-hmm. It's also got I can't remember, S-video in as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're professional. They really are very kind of versatile, and they are intended to be used in professional setting. And so they do have a lot of different options and so on. And the new ones, you can get wireless ones. You can get all sorts of amazing things. But you would need to do your homework because they definitely wouldn't work with everything. And particularly the camera itself, you start to kind of, in the consumer grade cameras, they don't have as many inputs and outputs. And when you get up to that sort of semi-pro, when you start to spend a little bit more money, then you start to see more and more ports and more options on them.
Yeah, it's amazing. All the toys that we can get, and then once you get a collection going, there's always a whole nother list of things to get, and you also accumulate boxes of stuff that is somehow you don't throw away, but you don't use. Do you, as a question, do you have any specific workflows for different kinds of video types, like for example a music video compared to a commercial or something like that?
Yes, I think that there are. I do a lot of what I do, the bread and butter kind of thing that I do, are interviews and talking heads kinds of things. And so I have my workflow is probably optimized for that. I've got some definitely, things like I set up a lot of templates, so that as soon as I'm a workflow maniac, and I love all my productivity tips and so on. That's like my absolute, my favorite thing to do. And so I will set up templates. And so if I know that I'm going to be using the same folders over and over again, I can show you very quickly if you like.
Cool.
So if I had a here's a demo. So if I make, this is my new job, and I'll call this Adobe Live. Here's a demo. Adobe Live. Here's a demo. So as you can see, now I'm going to go. This is going to get real geeky just for a second. This is the terminal, and this is a way of controlling your computer using the keyboard, not using the mouse. This is a little shortcut I've got called F, which is just going to drop me into the Adobe. So as you can see now, it says I'm in that folder, desktop, Adobe Live, here's a demo. And I'm going to use a command from a guy called Brett Terpstra, who's a massive Mac nerd who I think is super smart. I type plant job, and it has just created all of the folders nested that I need for a job. so that's very easy for me to update. So every time that as you can see, I've got like I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, selecting with the keyboard really quickly, and it gets that, but everyone's off, so I'll delete that now.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I've also got templates set up in Premiere and After Effects, and auditioning sort of use ability. Once I sort of start to think, if I go into templates and then into Premiere template, if I open up that, you can see there's a whole bunch of here's my like default folders for Premiere that I can just put things into. And so I find that with consistency, I'm able to save a lot of time rather than repeating the same steps over and over again. So I think I've gone a little bit off the topic of the original question, but I think that with there's no one technique that I'd apply to everything. I think there are some there's consistency amongst different projects that I try to recognize when I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And then, but every single project would be unique, and then I would probably adapt the workflow to fit the how that project is best suited.
Yeah, cool, very good. I love going off on a bit of a tangent. That's always good. It's where all the nuance lives. It's a nice place to be. We were talking about attention spans before. Like, have you had to how do you deal with that? When you need to make a commercial or something like that? Like, are there any tips or things that you might need to try to attract people's attention when you're creating video content?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm always learning, and like TikTok is an amazing platform, I think, for seeing what I think the people on TikTok are the most innovative stuff. It's incredible what you can someone puts a tea towel on their head and they've got like 5 million views because they've done something really interesting and original and amazing. So other people are doing is just there's an amazing source for inspiration, and particularly during this pandemic, it's incredible what people do just with what they can find. I think one of the first conversations that I have with any client is just around like, can we shorter, so that every time, a client will sort of say, like this and this and this, I will want to kind of rein them in and say, look, have you thought about just doing this? So, I think it takes a lot of confidence to make, to just get in and get your message across and get out. And I think that people feel safe when they're able to, it's like that death by PowerPoint kind of feel safe. 120 slides with tons of text on them and tons of images and so on. And obviously fully rushed and an avalanche of information. So I think, for me, if you're able to convince the client to come along with you and make things as short as you can, make more of them if you have to, but I'd rather make sort of 6 20 seconds than 1 2.
Yeah, cool. I like it a lot. Well, keep the questions coming, guys. If there's any questions in the chat, we might move on to phase 2.
Okay.
What do you say?
Welcome to phase 2.
We are in it.
Okay, so the next thing that I'm to the great. So I shot this footage just in case anyone's joined and needs a little refresher. So the Sony A7 Mark II, the Sony A7S I, and I used picture profile in both of these instances, which shoots log footage, which makes it sound like I'm shooting number. But in this instance, it's actually short for logarithmic, and it's a way of percentage of brightness in the image to retain as much information as possible. And if that doesn't make a lot of sense, don't worry, because I'm going to go into it a little bit. So I've got, here we go. So this is just a still that I took. As you can see, I took the time to choose one where I didn't look like I'd been hitting the face with a frying pan. That's ungraded. And now here is a graded version of the same shot. As you can see,
looks a lot
there's
better.
more saturation, there's more contrast, everything that's just like, it's just a more pleasing image in so many ways. And here I've put them side by side. So the idea with log footage is that it's kind of flattened it out. So there's less contrast and less saturation. And you're thinking, why would I shoot in log footage, Ian? And the answer is because it gives you much more latitude when you're grading. So there's much more information that you can push and pull and twist and turn however you want, so that you end up with a better looking image at the end of it. So that's why you would shoot like that. It's a bit scary if you're shooting in it for the first time, because everything looks dreadful until you grade it. But then after a while, you kind of understand that there'll be a lot more latitude. Just to return again to the Shogun, which was this external monitor, devices like this, and indeed a lot of professional cameras have a way of, what they're called a lookup table, so which we're going to look at in a minute. And that effectively translates the image so that rather than seeing this kind of image through the lens when you're filming, it actually shows you a preview of what it could like when you grade it. So that then that's particularly show a client and they're looking at something like this and they're going, well, that's all washed out and flat and horrible. And then if you turn on your lookup table and suddenly, whammo, it looks, I'm not going to say beautiful, but better. And everyone feels happy. So that was just a little preamble to feed into how would I get that look in Premiere. So I'm going to just go back into here and we'll just turn off these images so we're only focusing on one. It's a little bit, I'll tell you what, I might just do, I've done one of those, here's one I prepared.
There's so
earlier.
many Ians on all of my screens. It's incredible. I've never seen so many Ians.
I apologize.
I love it. It's so good.
It was not.
It reminds me of the Gandalf GIF, when they're in the studio and they've got it on his nodding GIF on every single monitor. You seen that one?
Oh, I haven't seen that,
You
but
haven't?
yes,
Okay.
I can picture it. This is me being Gandalf. Okay, so effectively I've just sort of swapped over to, here's one I prepared earlier. So because I'm running this on my laptop and it's not the most powerful machine in the world, this is a low-res proxy, so everything should be a little bit snappier in this file. So here we go. We've got our two camera angles. And as we sort of just touched on before, they're shot in log footage. Specifically, it's S-Log2, which is Sony's version of log footage, which is why they look flat and washed out. So I can come in here. This is the Lumetri color system, which is from Adobe, and it's pretty amazing. It's like the built-in way of grading. So there's a lot of different ways to grade footage, but I'm just going to sort of do a basic one here just to sort of show you how you can pull this back to something a little bit better looking. So the first thing that you could do is you can just increase the contrast over here and then increase the saturation. And it's already starting to look a little bit better than it was before. You could also, rather than doing it here, if you want a little bit more control, this is the basic correction tab. If I click on that to collapse it and then click on curves, I can draw myself it's like an S curve for contrast. It basically means brightening the highlights and then dialing back down the shadows. And as you can see, there's way more kind of punch there. This little one, I just want to make a side note here. Global effects mute. I think it's one of those little kind of things that it isn't on by default, and I think it's something that people probably would love to know about. If I this little plus sign at the bottom of the program monitor, if I click on that, I get all of these different, I can edit the buttons down here. And global effects mute, this one, all that does is it just turns off all of the effects in your every sequence file, really quickly, so that if you've got a lot of different effects on, and your machine is really chugging along slowly, and you just want to properly, just turn on global effects mute, press play, everything's fine,
Profile,
and
which
then
gives you more
put it back on again when you need to.
Nice. That is really useful.
Yeah, and like I say, it isn't on by default, so that if you don't have that there and you wish you did, just click on that and drag it down to the bottom there. It's like really, really helpful one. Okay, so that's, in a pinch, you could probably sort of say, okay, that's not bad. You can look up here, Lumetri scopes, which is related to Lumetri color, and these scopes give you they're like the instruments in an airplane. It's kind of a way of understanding what you're seeing in a kind of a finer way. I won't go into what all of it is. Again, it looks cool to have on your screen, so that if you've got someone looking over your shoulder, just turn that on, and it makes you sort of look like you
just impress everybody in your house or studio. Or...
Exactly, which is sort of the main thing, I suppose.
These are the screenshots you need to send the client and say, look, we did a lot of stuff. There's some color over here. There's a graph over here that may not make sense, but just itemize every single plugin in your bill.
Turn everything on, and then also you get this get your overlays happening, get that happening. Like, look at that, numbers. What do they mean? I don't know, doesn't matter. Just get them on the screen. Just looks cool. And then okay, so effectively what we're seeing here is like the color value. So this is the lightness overall. There's no clipping. It's not going below 0 at any point, which means it's not getting clipped off in the shadows. There's no, I don't think there's any clipping here in the whites, which is desirable. Like, you don't have any big line out bits. These are the red, the green, and the blue. If there was a massive color cast, if the colors were really badly out, then you would sort of see like one of these much higher than the others, but they're looking like roughly equal, which is good. And so yeah, you can adjust over here, looking at your scopes, and then until you get a pleasing image here. So that's kind of one way of doing it. I'll just turn off overlays, and then I'm just going to go back to the default as a little shortcut for deleting all of the effects on an image, which is holding down Shift, type in delete, and it says remove attributes. I want to keep the motion, which is effectively like the scaling and position. Not too worried about these because I haven't changed them. I just want to delete the effects. So if I hit OK, we're back to normal. So that's a good little shortcut, and I'll show you the inverse of that in a minute as well.
Cool.
So another way of getting a look for your image is use a LUT, basically short for lookup table, and it's a lot like it's an Instagram where you've got it's all of the pixels in your source image to uses a lookup table, so it like looks up all of the colors and translates them into another image. And so that's a really a quick and easy way, particularly if you're new at the whole thing, to get a particular look like Instagram filter or just getting and there are a lot of professional LUTs out there, like some really beautiful stuff that people have put together. So I want to show you how I can apply a LUT to this image. I bought a bunch of, I've just been collecting them over the years. The one that I've got to show you is from a site called DLUTs. And if I go in here to, you've got two places to apply them. So I'm in the Lumetri color tab again. Under basic correction, you've got input. This is for your so-called technical, which will, it kind of, if you want to convert colors from one space to another, or compensate for the failings in a particular camera, or get it back to sort of some baseline level, this is where you'd apply it. And then under creative, this is where you do your look. And so that's where you'd actually kind of get your Instagram filter kind of effect.
Right.
So if I go in here, I've already put these in here. So there are some defaults. And so I've got the LUTs from my particular camera in there, A7S Mark II. So if I just select that, that's going to sort of very subtle. You probably can't see any difference there. And then under creative, there's all of these different looks. And so if I flick through, this is the preview, you can sort of see there's a bunch of different, I don't know if you can see those changing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so once you find one that you kind of like, a whole bunch of black and white ones there. And as you can see, it's reminiscent of that Instagram filter. There's kind of ones with faded shadows, ones with blown out highlight with green tints, or there's if I just that's trying to emulate a film stock. So if I double click on that, I'll get a beat. Oh, it's beach balling me, Flynn.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny.
You're probably not seeing it because
beach ball doesn't come up over this side.
No, it's pretty. It's I might need to actually.
That's cool.
I'm just going to kill that and come back to it.
It happens. So just to let you know, chat as well. So we've got about 30 minutes, 36 minutes kind of left on the timer. So if you do have any questions for Ian, just keep them coming through. We are asking a lot of your system over there to be doing Premiere Pro audio coming in. You've got Bluetooth headphones on, external microphone coming through, and we're pushing it all out as well, and also sending you data back. So it is understandable that Premiere wanted to take a little bit of a break or have a little bit of a fit. It does happen.
Yep.
It's happened to me a lot.
It does happen. So, okay, back to where we were. So
nice.
I was just choosing there's a technical LUT, which is just going to, actually, you know what, I'll just leave that off for the moment. I'll just put on the creative LUT. So I thought Madeira was quite a nice looking LUT. So
Ian in the camera seems to like that one. Footage in. It's like, ooh, that's nice.
It's a little bit overexposed, so I'm just going to turn down the exposure a smidge, and you can see if I do the global effects mute that we were talking about before, you can see before sort of flat and unsaturated, and then after you kind of get this nice a richer look with more saturation, but it's not super contrasty, but it's just kind of it's a nice look. And so that was literally basically choosing a LUT and then turning down the exposure a little bit. So very simple to achieve. And then just on a slightly technical note, if you want to install your own LUTs, like there are a lot of LUTs out there, and a lot of them are free, some of them paid. I've bought a whole bunch that I think were really great and worthwhile, and I haven't regretted it. There's a shortcut here. I only know where to put them on a Mac, but if you go into, so in this instance, you go into Library, then Application Support, then Adobe, then Common, then LUTs, and you can make a folder called Creative, and those ones are going to show up under the Creative tab here.
Nice.
And Technical, those LUTs are going to show up under the Input LUT here, along with the default ones that Adobe have given you.
Do you need to call it technical? Do you need to call it exactly that?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, creative and technical, and then if you put them in there, then they'll pop up, and it'll save you a lot of digging around every single time. And it also means that you get to use the little preview window that comes up here, which is quite a helpful way of getting a heads up without having to sort of go through every single one.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a kind of a nice, easy way if you've shot in log footage to get a better looking image, get a better looking quality for yourself. Now, if I go back to where we go, graded. This is again one that I set up earlier. So I went through, gave them. So it was, that was one thing that I wanted to demonstrate was just here we go with 4 different camera angles, and I've given them all that LUT and moved them around a little bit and sort of tried to mirror them so that they look similar. Like there's a little bit of color variation between the two different angles, even though they were very similar cameras and they had the same white balance on them. I still needed to fiddle around with them to get them. If you're going to switch between camera angles, you want the colors to be as sort of faithful to one another, to match up as closely as you can.
Yeah.
And so I spent a bit of time doing that.
Just a question before we move on from there. Is there an advantage to doing color correction on the footage over on an adjustment layer?
It depends on. So in this instance, because I have two different sources, so I've got like one camera which is subtly different from the other camera. So if I put an adjustment layer over the top, it would adjust all of my angles.
Right.
But that's a good question. If you were using an adjustment layer and you weren't fussed, or you could actually, if you'd sort of like, you could have individual color corrections on each source item, and then put an adjustment layer over the top of everything and give it all a look. That would be a really good way of doing it, because then you'd have all of the efficiency of only having to adjust your settings in one place.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, which would be that would make a lot of sense. In this instance, because I've got different camera angles with slightly different color, that I'm just gonna, and I can just like copy and paste the settings from one to the other, and I'm done. But yeah, an adjustment layer would make a lot of sense as well.
Cool. Thanks, Amanda, for the question.
So then, effectively, what I wanted to just show you here was if I'm happy with this angle and the grading on that angle, and then I want to apply it to this one, and just pretend that I hadn't already done that. So I'm going to delete the Lumetri color. So we have that grade on there, and I want it on there. I just select the clip that I want to copy it from, hit copy, select the clip that I want to copy it to. It's Command Option V, which is like paste attributes, which would be Control Alt V on Windows. And then I can just sort of say, it'll look at what's on the clipboard, and I'll say, what do you want to paste? Do you want to paste everything? I say, no, I only want to paste Lumetri color. If there were more effects on there, obviously they would show up in there as well. And then when I paste it, you can see it's pasted just that effect. The other way of doing that would be, if I hit undo, you could actually go into your effect controls. I could just hit copy on Lumetri color and go paste, and that would be the other way of doing it. So there's a couple of different options there. And that's that for grading in different angles. So now you've got everything set up.
Cool.
How are we going for time?
So we've probably got 29 minutes on the timer.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So the next big thing that I wanted to show was, this was a bit of a revelation for me when I discovered it. I thought this was kind of amazing. There's a plugin for Premiere. It's a paid plugin. I don't remember exactly how much it is. Even if you don't use the plugin, this is still going to be helpful, just because it's helpful to get a transcript of what people are saying. There's a bunch of services out there that do transcriptions for you. So you send them the audio file, they'll go away, they'll get sort of their team of winged monkeys to listen to the audio and then type it all up and then send you back. And the accuracy is usually very good, and it'll cost you some money. But there is increasingly more and more artificial intelligence out there. So there are services, people who are providing AI transcription. And the one that I've used and I really like is called Speechmatics. It is quite cost effective for what you get. The quality is
it's a quick switch.
Yeah, exactly. It's 5 bullet points. So if you're effectively going, it's a Scottish company, you buy a whole bunch of credits, and then you get that translates into minutes. So you just go into transcription, you go, and in this instance I would find the WAV file or MP3 that you want to upload. You could convert it to an MP3 to make it faster to upload. You just drop it in there. You choose what language you want. It's got like a whole bunch of languages in there. I was speaking English, and then you basically say go, and then within like literally a couple of minutes, it'll give you back a transcription. Now, the quality of the transcription varies wildly depending on the quality of the audio. So that if it's one person speaking, and I suspect that if you had a BBC News reader, then the quality would be better than the quality that I get back. But generally speaking, it's good, and if you're trying to get through, like whether it's a podcast or an interview or something like that, you can find phrases or words or interesting parts of the interview very, very quickly by using this transcription. It's a huge game changer for me, just because it means that I can get things transcribed. Even if there isn't a whole lot of budget on there, I can just send it off to Speechmatics, get it back, and I'm away. So it's very good. And the upside of having slightly not perfect quality is that sometimes the transcripts are hilarious. As in, every now and then it'll get a word wrong, and it's just like I've been in tears laughing at just at what it thinks I said versus what I actually said. So just a little perk there.
Nice. So I think Fleur in the chat was asking. So the transcription is for subtitles. I think you're going to demo exactly how it works. But my understanding is it will transcribe the audio and bring it into text. But somehow you're going to show us how it comes into Premiere Pro. Yeah,
and that's a good question. What I'll do is just demo how you use this in Premiere, and then touch on the subtitles, because I think that's really a good point, a good question. This is the plugin that I was talking about here. It's called Transcriptive. When I fire that up, and as I say, this is a paid plugin. It's from a company called Digital Anarchy. And I have already wired it up to my Speechmatics account, which is very simple. You just basically kind of get a special key that you paste in here. And then when I hit import, you've got Speechmatics comes up as one of the options down here. So when I do that, it connects directly to that website. And then I can see this is the transcript that I sent up there previously. I hit import, and here comes the transcript.
Wow.
So I can see here, if I click on that and press play.
I don't remember how fast it is, but it's a good little lens. That is plugged into a Shogun external monitor and using HDMI out to send the raw.
Yeah, to get a fork signal. I don't know what that means, but there's obviously as well, if you're talking about something very technical, like if there were two surgeons talking about a medical procedure, there'd be a lot of technical language that presumably would stump the speech engine. And here I'm talking a lot about things like Shogun monitor, log footage, all these kinds of things. And also the more, if you were using a lot of vernacular, so conversational language, then it might sort of like get a little bit confused. But generally speaking, so if I go through here and I can say, here's a part where I'm talking about the advantage of multiple cameras. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, so if I click on here and hit play.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was the advantage of having multiple cameras.
So as you can imagine, if you had an hour-long interview and basically an hour-long interview is screeds of words. And so this way you can search. So if I wanted to type in here angle, and I can see there's only one, or if I typed in camera, I can jump between the different sort of, every time that I say camera. So for being able to, if I just click on a single word, it'll jump to the corresponding part of the timeline. So if I needed to grab this bit, so I don't remember how fast it is, I just put in my in point there and put grading, and then
grading. So
put my out point there. I hit copy, and then I can just grab that into process or the bits I want to grab and paste that in there, and whoops, and there it is. So it's obviously it's a very it's an incredibly fast way of using that artificial intelligence speech, even though it's not perfect, for editing, especially if you were doing like a long podcast or if you had a lot of interview footage. There are so many, or even if it was a Zoom meeting or something like that that you needed to take minutes for or anything. If you feed it into Speechmatics, you can use a plugin like Transcriptive in Premiere, or you can just get the pure transcript as well. It's incredibly sort of fast and cost-effective way of working.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So unless there are any questions on that, there was one other thing which would probably take us right up to the end of the session.
Cool, we're getting close. Yeah, we've got about 21 minutes left on the timer, just to give you an update.
Sure. Okay. Well, the other thing that I seem to manage to just freeze on just the most hilarious frame for some reason.
I'm screen grabbing all of this from the YouTube clip after, for sure.
Of course you are. Okay, cool. Anyway, so this other little thing, which I think is quite nifty, hasn't been around for that many years. It's so to me, it's comparatively new, and that's being able to make motion graphics templates in After Effects that then you can use in Premiere that are editable, which is kind of amazing. So when we go into here, this is After Effects, and I'm just going to make a brand new comp, and we'll call this Adobe Demo, and I'll just make myself a little I'm just going to make a like a title, like a subtitle for a caption for saying someone's name. So I'll put my name in here, and we will, there we go, make that a bit bigger. Okay, and I'm just going to give a shout out to this Aussie company called Plugin Everything, who makes some really great After Effects plugins. They're doing some very cool stuff. And they've got very funny demo videos as well, so check them out.
Oh, really?
This one is called Textbox 2. And what that does is it basically takes your text and puts a box behind it. It gives you a ton of different options here. So I can change the expansion. And so the box will, if I change, it'll automatically expand or contract the box depending on what I want to do. So you've got a whole bunch of different options. I can give it a bit of color there, for example, and then I can also animate it. So if I said, all right, we're going to map the text to the fill, which means that if the fill is, I'll just show you what that means actually. So that if individual expansion. So if I say I'm going to say that the anchor point is on the left of the box, and I'm going to turn off uniform scale. And then if I change the width of the box, that is hanging over the edge, which might be what you want, but I'm going to say map text to fill, and it'll just chop it off. So this way we're going to reveal the text with the text box. So I'm going to say start off with a scale of 0, and then we are going to put a keyframe in there, and then after say 1 second, or maybe a bit less, we'll say 1 second so we can see what's going on. It's going to be 100%. So if I play that back now, change my preview, there we go. It reveals my name. It looks a bit, there's no easing on that at all, which looks a bit ghastly. So we're going to use this great plugin I found called Ease and Whiz and hit apply.
I was going to give you a shout out at some point, but you created Ease and Whiz, I believe.
Yes, I did. That was a bit of a buried the lead there. But yeah, this is like, you can go onto ace.com and you can download this. You can pay for it or you can not pay for it. It's totally up to you. So, but yeah, this gives you different ways of changing the speed of your motion, so that if you as you can see, that's like much more dramatic. If I turn off, you can see that's linear, which means it doesn't accelerate or decelerate. And then with ease and width, so we could even get more dramatic with the circ ease and type. And you can see here it'll be, I don't know how that's showing through on yours.
Yeah, it's coming through. I think it is.
Yeah, let's stay with Expo. Okay, so there we go. We've got our that's our first one. I'm just going to duplicate that. This is going to be like underneath. We'll just make another one, which will be like my, I don't know, title, I suppose. Make that a bit darker, and then we'll call that guy in the backyard. And so that's going to do the same thing. I'll just offset that a tiny bit. Okay, and then we want them to go away again at the end. So I'll just duplicate. I'm just going to do a real quick and nasty one here. So copy those keyframes, copy those keyframes. I'm going to click keyframe assistant, time reverse keyframes, and then at the end, they will show up, and then at the end, they'll go away again.
Awesome.
Now, where it starts to get interesting is when you use the Essential Graphics plugin. I just want to save this because I am in the habit of saving things. MoGraph demo.
That's a good habit to be in.
Yeah, I've learned over the years the hard way. So this is the tricky part. So, well, not tricky, but clever part. So under source text here, and what we want to do is basically make this so that you can edit it in Premiere. So we're going to export certain properties that are then editable. So in this instance, the source text. So if I right click on that or control click on that, and I'm going to go add property to Essential Graphics, and it'll automatically. Adobe Demo, I'm calling everything Adobe Demo, it's going to get confusing. Adobe MoGraph Demo. And so that's for the first one, guy in the backyard. And for this one, we're going to do add property to Essential Graphics as well. And so that's the, we could call this subtitle, and we could call this name. And these are really just sort of convenience. This is just for our convenience, basically. So what we do with that, and one more thing, this is super helpful. As you can see right now, the preview is just a black square, which is not helpful. So if you go into your project window, and it's a black square, and that's because it's taking it from the time of 0, where it is a black square. If I go into you think I'd know this. I'm going to do this poster frame, set poster time. It is in composition.
I always use help to search within apps. Yeah. I often forget where things are buried.
That's incredibly helpful. So the reason that wasn't highlighted is because I needed this timeline to have the focus. Now when I go up there, set poster time, you can see a little preview up there. And I thought it would add it there as well. I did. Okay, there it is. So nice. Now there's a preview, which is going to be super helpful when we try and find it later on. Okay, so just for the sake of keeping it simple, we're only going to export the source text for these. One more little thing. Now, when you import this into Premiere, you're not always going to have it at the same duration. So sometimes you might want the title to be on screen for 5 seconds, and sometimes you might want it to be for 10 seconds. And this is the next part is basically giving you a bit of flexibility for that. I'm just going to trim that down. We go into composition and responsive design time. So if I set my preview bar up here to we're going to create the intro now. This will become clear soon. Responsive design time, create intro. It's going to give you this. Actually, I didn't need to do that, but it's just chucked my own little. That is going to. That
just going to see if I can move our heads out of the way without doing something weird. So let's.
Oh yeah, right.
Let's see if I can do that.
Or I can move. I can change the window if you like. Is that easier?
That might be.
Window up here.
It might be. Your skills are far superior to my skills on this side. That's for sure.
Okay, so then under responsive design, I'm going to say create outro.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to define that as my outro region. And then under responsive design time, create protected region from work area. And that's where I do need my work area. So I'm going to put in, press B to set the beginning of my work area, N to set the end of my work area, and we'll call that create protected region from work area. So this part is just static. That's not changing here. This part is always going to be the intro, and this part's always going to be the outro, even if I extend the time in Premiere. So I'll show you what that means in a minute. I'm going to go back to full. Now, ready to export that. If I export this motion graphics template now, local templates folder is fine because it's going to appear in Premiere in a place that is nice and easy to find. Compatibility, so it's if you were distributing your motion graphics templates, so you wanted to give them, you wanted to sell them, or you wanted to put them online, or you wanted to share them with other people, you would need to pay really close attention to these. So it's effectively saying, like, do you want me to warn you if you're using fonts that aren't available on Adobe fonts, if you're using special plugins or anything like that? It's all around the sharing of it. If you knew that you were only going to be using this on your machine, then go for it. Don't worry about having to. Don't worry about the warnings. I'm going to turn these off for now because it would warn me because I am using a plugin, and I think the font's from Adobe Font, but I'm using a plugin, so it would complain about that. It would say, "Oi, are you sure you want to export this motion graphics template with a plugin?" I say, "Oi." So I've turned off that. So it's just going to check everything's tickety-boo, and it seemed to be fine. So now
nice.
We go back into Premiere, and if I look in libraries, I'll put that over here so we've got a bit more room. It's not libraries, is it? It's essential graphics is what I want. And here we go. So that's the one I just created. So because I exported it into the local templates folder, it's just come through with everything next to cool caption, which was the one I did the other day to make sure that this all worked okay. So now it's just a matter of dragging that onto my timeline, and it'll load it up. Now, the magic here is it uses dynamic link. So there's an actual, there's a live link between Premiere and After Effects. So it uses the After Effects engine to create the content inside Premiere on the fly. So that's, it means that you don't need to go into After Effects, render something out, import it, and then make a change, render it out and re-import it. You just make the changes, and you get to expose whatever kind of properties that you want to be editable. So in this instance, I've made it at 4K, so I'll just scale that down. Haigh, guy in the backyard. Now that
was a quick little switch to bring it low. Was that a shortcut to reduce?
Oh yeah,
that down?
I have a ton of shortcuts. So you've either got, like, you can use the keyboard shortcut editor in Premiere. And so in this instance, I've got it as scale to frame size is Control S. That's one way of doing it. It's also a great way to sort of like just find out what is set to a shortcut as well, because you obviously when it's graphic like this, it makes it so much easier to understand what's been assigned. If I hold down the Shift key, you can see these are all the Shift shortcuts. So yeah, it's incredibly powerful.
Cool. Nice.
And if you use Adobe Creative Cloud to sync them, then you can, if you're on different machines, then it'll sync your keyboard shortcuts between them all. I'm just going to render that little bit of the timeline so it plays back smoothly, and hopefully we'll see. Here we go. Haigh, guy in the backyard.
Nice. Welcome to the Haigh gardening show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what's that guy with the beard?
Yeah. He's always so excited about plants. It's
he's really amazing. I met him once. So he's just like that in real life. He's awesome. Yeah.
You'd have to be, right? He'd have to be to keep it up.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah.
Okay, so the amazing thing about this is that because we exported those as we exported these as like actual motion graphics properties, I can give myself like a rock and roll umlaut on Haigh, for example. I don't know if you can see that. I can change my title from guy in the backyard to guy who has a cup of tea, and so it's live. It's basically the I could and doesn't put down that pen. I can't type with it. Know what to do with it. Okay, and so it's automatically changed the with that text box plugin. It's rendered it on the fly. If I render this in Premiere so that it plays back smoothly, you'll see that it all, without having to go back into After Effects, it's worked beautifully.
That's so good.
And by changing what we did before, if I switch back to After Effects for a second, the intro and the outro, by defining those in here, it's told Premiere that if I change the duration of this, so I can make it like way longer, for example, if I hadn't defined the intro and the outro in the protected area, by dragging it all out, it would have slowed down the animation at the start. But as you can see, if I play that back now, it's still snappy, and it just stays on screen for as long as we want. And then when you get back to the outro bit,
multi-camera setup,
they snap back in, and so that gives you an enormous amount of flexibility when you're creating these, because you get to sort of do it at whatever. You can have it animate in and animate out at any duration as long as you've set it up correctly. So there's a huge amount of flexibility there.
Yeah, that's so useful, and just being able to kind of get in there and be creative within the app, with it all just being there, not having to jump around, having everything set up. It just makes it it opens those doors up just to be a little bit more creative and less frustrated by having to jump around and make changes and kind of lose your flow a little bit.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. It's sort of particularly like if you are an After Effects legend and you know your way around the program, you can then set up an amazingly sophisticated motion graphics templates and hand them off to someone who doesn't need to know After Effects at all. Just you could sell them on the Adobe marketplace. You can create the just really flexible ones, because there's so much under the hood here. Like under the you can add. So if I add a group kind of thing, then you can get as sophisticated as you like. Name them, put comments in. You can expose all sorts of different properties. Like obviously I only did source text here, but basically anything that you see here, you can add that to your motion graphics template. You can use expressions and wire it all up however you like, so that you can change the color. You could have a whole cascade effect where you use JavaScript to calculate the complementary color from one color, so that if you changed it in one place, that it had this kind of domino effect throughout your entire motion graphics template, for example. And the beauty of it is you don't have to, you only expose the complexity that you need to, so that the end user in Premiere can just basically click on a button and all of that stuff happens under the hood. They don't need to know any JavaScript. They don't need to know any After Effects. But it's also, if in your own workflow, if I needed to, if I was using the motion graphics template in several places throughout Premiere, for example, and then I decided that I needed to change the font wherever they were being used, I can just go into After Effects, change the font to whatever. I don't know. So that's Ketchup's font. Hit save, and when I go back into here, and if I don't think it'll update immediately, but if I drag that back in there, if I close it and reopen the file, then you'll see. Of course, it doesn't work when I need it to, but it will work.
No, and it does.
yeah, but it does. It's a very effective, way of working. It's incredibly fast.
Oh, that's amazing. We had some questions as we were going through there. Didn't want to get in the way of your flow, because There was a question about the plugin that you used. What was the other plugin you used from the Aussie company? Maybe you could just tell us both of them, because I'm not sure which.
I used Textbox 2, and the best way to figure out, I think it's like I think it might be plugineverything.com. Otherwise, there we go, plugineverything.com. So this is like they do. I was using this one, Textbox 2, which I think is just really convenient, really elegantly put together. But they're doing a whole bunch of cool stuff, as you can see. And they're Aussie, so support them. They're doing good stuff.
That's always a bonus. And Gideon, I know you asked a question before, so I'm sorry I've taken so long to get back to this, but he was asking, can you record your screen through this software? And maybe Ian, you can jump in on this, but yeah, so for Premiere, it's usually post-editing, so it's not designed to screen record. If you're interested in screen recording, the best free option if you're on a Mac is probably QuickTime. I don't know, Ian, if you have another option. The other thing is to use streaming software and just record locally and get that out, and that could be quite good. And the free one that I've used in the past is called OBS Studio. So if you're interested in recording your screen to do something short or even stream or something like that, those are two solutions for you that are both free. But Ian, I don't know if you have any other tips for recording your screen.
I use this one for my YouTube channel. Little
like and subscribe
there. I use this one, which is called ScreenFlow, which it's really nicely done. So you kind of, it automatically records your camera, records your screen, an external mic, and so on, and it gives you, there's a lot of convenience features. So if you need to zoom on part of the screen and then highlight a bit or show keyboard shortcuts, they've really thought about it from like a demonstration point of view. So if you it's commercial, it'll cost money, but I mean, for me, I mean, what does it say, starting at $129? It's not super cheap, but if you're thinking about doing more of this kind of thing, a lot of the speed ups that it offers, it's actually quite sophisticated, and there's a lot of convenience functions in there to make.
Yeah, so there's a scale. There's a couple of free options, and obviously, paid option if you kind of want to get up there. I always kind of recommend to people, do the free version first. You might end up finding that you hate it, or you might actually fall in love with it, and then slowly kind of ramp up your investment. The last thing you want to do is spend money on things and then realize, oh, actually this isn't for me, or it's not actually what I was after. So that's my
agreed. And basically recording the screen with QuickTime is fantastic. A lot of people don't realize you can just record the screen with QuickTime. It's it will do a lot of what people want, I suspect.
Yeah, especially if you want to do a little bit of post editing in After Effects or Premiere, you can do that really, really, really quite quickly. But but this has been great, Ian. We're sort of winding down. We've got about a minute and a half left or so. Thank you for everything. Thanks for answering the questions, and I love your workflow tips. I always learn so much from you. And
that's great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And where can people find you? We'll do. You've got a YouTube channel now?
I have a YouTube channel. So I've yet to link to that. From ianhaigh.com. Ianhaigh.com is basically where I'm going to share sort of tips, productivity tips, workflow tips, Adobe things. But yeah, I've got a YouTube channel which is effectively in its kind of infancy, but I'm really excited about it. I'm learning more about it. And as we touched on before, ketchup.net.au is the
cool
side of things. And so that's just launched. It's fresh out of the oven with new content. And so, yeah, I'd appreciate it if you give it a look. Otherwise, drop me a line at Ian Haigh, and I'll get back to you.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again. Thank you, chat. Thanks for the great questions. We're back. Well, I'm back tomorrow with Jeffrey Chen at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Why we do it? It's just because it's fun.
That's commitment. Wow.
And so that's sort of around 3 p.m. I believe in North America, PT. So if you want to check that out, if you want to hang out with us and do some speed painting, we'd love to have your company once more. And Ian, we'll see you next time on Adobe Live.
All right. Thanks so much.